What if I told you there's one edge in carp fishing that trumps everything else? And it's got absolutely nothing to do with rigs, or bait, or even location. So for this session, we're down on my Syndicate for the next 48 hours, where I'll be diving into what I believe is one of the most powerful but overlooked factors in modern day carp fishing. So stick around, because this could just change your outlook on not only carp fishing, but angling as a whole. Welcome back to another Syndicate Diaries, and as with all other Syndicate Diaries, there's a topic that we're going to discuss, and hopefully you guys continue the discussion or debate down in the comment section below like you normally do on these videos. And this is another biggie. It's a pretty bold statement in the title, I know, the biggest edge in carp fishing fact, but I genuinely believe no one can disagree with me on this one. Even though I'm posting this on the internet where everyone likes to disagree with things, I genuinely think no one can disagree with me on this one. But you'll have to stay tuned for exactly what that is, because for now, I'm going to bring you up to speed with what's gone on today on this session, because I'm down at my Syndicate for the next 48 hours, believe it or not, which is the longest session I've been able to do on here in a very long time. Normally, I get 24 to 36 hours on here, but I've managed to get 2 nights, so 2 nights ahead of me, plenty of time, and I'm feeling pretty confident for a bite. So when I got here, I did what I usually do, a lap of the lake. I like to talk to the other anglers that are on, look for fish, of course, but unfortunately, there's no other anglers on, absolutely no one whatsoever, so there's no one to talk to, and I couldn't really find anything until finally I got to the very last swim, back where the car is, in the first bay that I kind of overlooked on my first walk round. I saw some fish in the reeds, I saw some fish in the pads, and I saw some sheeting up and bubbles. Great, I found the fish. That's the first thing, and also quite nice. It's right next to the car park. I can see my car whilst filming this intro. And so of course I started off here. I brought the rods in, brought the rods to the swim, sorry, but nothing else really. I didn't want to set up stall here, set up camp, shall I say, because if I didn't want to stay here, I didn't want to have to pack everything down and move on. So the first thing I did was got the first rod out and rigged that up. Everything needed re-rigging because this is the first carp session I've done since Sweden. Little plug there, if you've not seen the Sweden carp fishing video, go back and watch it. Absolutely awesome trip and some lovely fish as well. But of course I want you to stick around and watch this one for now. So I re-rigged the rods one at a time, taking my time, being methodical, making sure I got everything absolutely spot on. Bait poled out to where the bubbles have been coming up and dropped the pole, or dropped the bait, sorry, nice and quietly with the pole, so minimal disturbance, one rod set. Then sat and watched the water for a bit longer with just the one rod out, and then saw that there was still quite a few fish in the pads to my left. And as they weren't on the bottom feeding, but they weren't taking dog biscuits off the top, again, I had to resort to a zig, which is still currently out. I tied up a 5-foot zig, which should be about a foot, foot and a half under the surface, something like that. Shipped that out with a baiting pole as well. Now, a little bit more awkward being a zig using the baiting pole, but it wasn't too much of an issue because it wasn't too long. I put the lead in the baiting spoon with the anti-tangle sleeve, which is quite large, slightly wedged into the little slit on the side of the bushwhacker, so it's sticking upright. That meant that the line came out of the spoon and then back along the surface to my buoyant bait, because it's a zig, all of that was on the surface. And to make sure that didn't tangle with the main line on the way out, I dipped the rod under the tip, under the water from the edge of the platform as low as I could, so the line was going from well underwater up to the spoon, and then my zig was going across the surface on the top. So if you're ever trying to put a zig out with a baiting spoon, I've seen techniques where people use zip ties and things to attach the hook on and stuff, but you're relying on a dead straight tight line on that. So it worked. I shipped it out to where I want it to be, just on the edge of the pads, dropped the lead, and I could see it work because it went down, zig zipped across the surface and then disappeared. So I know nothing's tangled. It dropped nice and quietly, and that sat on the edge of the pads. And I left it with the 2 rods. I haven't put a 3rd rod out, and I've been fishing for probably 4-5 hours now. Unfortunately, no fish. Of course, we would have saw that so far, but I think putting a 3rd rod out would have been pointless. I hadn't seen anything else to go by. I think an extra line in the water might have overdone it. So I've got one on the deck between the pads and the reeds, and one on a 5-foot zig just off the pads. So not much line in the water, to be honest, but it's not happened yet. So I'm not too fussed. I'm feeling pretty good. And because I didn't set anything up, I still had the option to move around. But as I'm still seeing fish, I still see fish in the area. And I think once that sun starts to drop, they're more likely to drop down and feed on the deck. I think I am going to stay here at least for the first night. So I've wheeled all my stuff into the swim, and I start setting up camp and think about getting the 3rd rod tied up, ready to go somewhere, and getting some bait out later on as well. Because at the moment, other than what I've dropped in the baiting pole, there is no bait out there. It's just one dropped on the baiting spoon and a little pop-up sitting 5 foot off the deck, off the pads as well. But there's fish here And if I put some bait out, hopefully they'll stay around into the night and start feeding. And also it's worth noting that the weather's been flat calm all day and really warm, low 20s. But the weather's changing slightly. The breeze is picking up. It's a nice cool breeze, which is pushing up this way actually. It's a fresh wind. And also, it's going to start raining tonight and into the early hours and the morning tomorrow. So weather's changing. The wind's pushing up here. I've seen fish. I'm feeling pretty confident. But for now, I need to get the shelter up because when that rain does come, I don't still want to be sat here on a bucket thinking, am I going to move or should I set up here? So let's do that. And then we will, I promise, discuss the biggest edge in carp fishing. Fact. With the carp having seemingly moved off temporarily, I took the opportunity to have a lead about, fine-tune spots and see exactly what I was fishing over, ready for all 3 rods to go out on the deck for the night ahead. If you like the look of the Nothing But Fishing t-shirts and hoodies that I wear, then check the link in the description below to get your own and use the codes that are also down there for a saving. Well, I think last night was the definition of tranquility and peacefulness, because not only was I the only person on this lake, and have been since yesterday, but I was the only person on the entire complex. And it's not like this complex of lakes is surrounded by houses and people. So when everyone left last night, you could hear a pin drop. There was just no noise whatsoever, bar the wildlife itself. So you'd think I'd get a good night's sleep, but I didn't, because I got the odd liner here and there which kept me up. And because I'm fishing as close to locked up as possible, because I'm fishing next to pads and reeds and stuff, I don't want to give them too much. It meant that every couple of beeps could have been my bobbin stuck against the blank and a fish on. So legs were getting flung out the bed chair, shoes on, darting out the bivvy, and then the bobbin would just drop back down to where it was. So that kept me up, and then the rain started probably about 1 a.m, and I think it's set to rain until early afternoon. It looks good for a bite. You're looking at this bivvy door, it just looks perfect for a bite. The drizzle coming down, light rain, overcast. It's a bit cooler than yesterday. It just looks so good for a bite. And also, I'm seeing bubbling. I've been up for the last couple of hours. I got up since first light, been watching the water. And I'm seeing bubbles exactly where I want to see bubbles, which is where the rigs are. It's why I set up in this swim yesterday, because although I saw the fish on the surface in the pads yesterday and in the reeds, they were also sheeting up and bubbling between the pads and the reeds, where I've got some rods right now. And thankfully, some bubbles are coming up on the island spots. Bubbles have come up near the pads where my middle rod is. So I think there's fish feeding in the area. It's got a bit quiet the last 10 minutes or so, but I'm feeling confident. And if nothing happens this morning, I'm not too concerned, because I've still got more session ahead of me than what I've already done, because I've got a lot more time on my hands. And I always feel more confident going into the second night, because you feel you've got a spot established, you know what you're doing, you're settled in, you're starting to read the behaviours of the carp, you're taking in all the information you possibly can from out your bivvy door to fine-tune your ideas and your plan going forwards. And I'm feeling good that where I am and what I'm doing is going to put me in with a good chance of a bite going into the second night, if not today. Now, one other angler has now turned up, and he's not had anything to go on. He's done a whole lap of the lake, saw nothing, but because I'm up here and there's no one down the other end of the lake, I think he's going to try down there. So out of the whole lake, there's now only 2 of us on, so it's still very, very quiet. And you almost want more people on a venue like this to push the fish around, because I'm in a lovely looking corner, but I can only see a very small percentage of the lake, and they could be everywhere else but where I am, but you never know. Time to get the kettle on, have some breakfast, continue to watch the water, and then we'll start our discussion finally on what the biggest edge in carp fishing is. Fact. Well, it's finally stopped raining, which means I can sit outside the bivvy and enjoy some of the evening sunshine. That's right, it's already the evening. Today has flown by. I've been very productive editing the Sweden carp fishing video in the bivvy, because I brought my laptop with me. And also, I've had a tench, so some exciting news on this session. I'm trying not to be too despondent about that, because of course, any bite I'd like it to be a carp. But it does mean that that rig was presented nicely, even 18 hours after I dropped it yesterday evening. So that gives me confidence that what I'm doing is presenting the rigs nicely, the bait's all working. It's just a case of whether the carp are going to come around before the tent. So I've redone all 3 rods. They've all been set out on exactly the same spots as yesterday, and fresh bait over the top of all of those. But now it's finally time to talk about the topic of this video, which is the greatest edge in carp fishing. Fact. Maybe put that in brackets, in my opinion, because that is time. And time on the bank, that is what I believe is the biggest edge in not just carp fishing, but all angling, because it can improve so many different aspects of your angling, not just one. Whereas if you talked about rig, it's specific to the person, the venue. If you talk about bait, same can be applied. If you talk about time, it covers everything. And I don't think anyone can disagree with you. If you had more time fishing, you have more chance of catching more fish. As simple as that. Law of averages. So that's the first point. If you've got more time, just like on this session, if I had just my usual 24 hours on here, I'd probably be going home on a blank, or at a push, I would have had that tench. But the fact I've got another night ahead of me, I've got greater chance of catching a carp going into the second night. So that's the obvious difference with having greater amount of time. And it's the same with all these different people you see in the fishing industry. I think we can all get a bit bogged down sometimes with scrolling through social media, seeing someone's caught this, someone's caught that. What you don't see is that a lot of these people have put a lot of time and effort into them. Of course, there's loads of other variables. I can already see the comments going, yeah, but a lot of those people are skilled anglers. They know what they're doing. Of course, but you don't get that skilled unless you're an anomaly without putting in the time first. So that's what I'm saying with time doesn't just increase your odds of catching on the session. It increases your ability in loads of different aspects going forward in lots of other things. I'll try and keep this a bit structured because I know it's a bit of a vague topic to talk about. But I've talked about the greater odds, the bigger odds of actually catching a fish. If your rod's in the water for 48 hours, you're more likely to catch than if they're in there for 24 hours. That's just basic. The next one is improvement over time. So I've listed things like your casting, rig tying, spotting, things like that. So again, just like with anything in life, if you're learning to drive, the more time you practice, the better you get at it. If you're learning to become a cook, the more time you do it, the better you get at becoming a cook. Unless you're me, I can cook chili con carne and that's about it. That's my peak. But it's the same can be applied to fishing. If you're fishing more often, more regularly, you'll get better at your casting, you'll get better at knowing how to feel a lead down, you get better at tying rigs, you get better at putting bait out accurately. There are so many different things that with extra time on the bank, you can get better at. And other than your time, and obviously maybe day ticket costs, things like that, time on the bank can be free if you work on it. So it's not like you have to buy the most expensive this, expensive that. If you can put some extra time in, you're going to gain different aspects of your angling. So moving on from that, get more in tune with the venue and the fish. So this comes into play with watercraft and things like that. I've been on this session, I've been up the lake now in this swim for just over 24 hours, and I've already noticed the feeding habits and the times that the fish are in this swim. They were here when I got here yesterday morning. It sort of petered out into the afternoon, and in the evening, they came back, started fizzing up. Same thing happened this morning. I was up at first light, bubbling up like mad. There was fish in the area. Then they went dead for hours. And at the moment, I'm looking out there, I'm not really seeing much. But if, from what I've already learned from the first night, is to be replicated, I'm expecting the fish to start turning up again within the next few hours into the evening and into tomorrow morning. That can be applied to loads of different sessions. There's loads of different instances in my own fishing. I'm not just saying this is a general rule for other people. In my own fishing, I've found that when I've had longer to do the fishing or longer time out on the bank, or I've dedicated a week to something, my angling ability gets better. I get in tune with the venue, and often my catch rates go. I remember the first time I caught a 30 pounder, my first ever 30, I booked a week off work and fished, I think 4 days solid. And I'd learnt the feeding habits and where the fish were certain times a day, rocked up into a swim where there was no fish at that time, but the previous couple of evenings they had turned up at a certain time. So set up there with no fish, got the rods out, the fish turned up, and I ended up having a 35-pound mirror, my first ever 30. And that's because I had time, and that time allowed me to learn the water, learn the fish's behaviours. And I've got loads of different examples of that, where having time invested in a venue, you get better. How often do you go fishing and the second night you go into, you feel more confident? That's not just because, I don't know, it's not because it's random, it's because you're in tune. There's lots of different things going on that you've taken in from the first 24 hours that you feel like your second 24 hours is just a lot more fine-tuned, refined. You know what you're doing a bit more. I hope this is all making sense and justify why I think time is the biggest edge in fishing. Next one is see what works and what doesn't work and develop patterns. So similar to watercraft, seeing where they are at certain times and things like that, you can also learn what rigs will work, what rigs don't. If you've only got 12-hour session and you wind in and your rig was all mass with a load of crap from the bottom, you haven't got time to change the rigs and fish properly for the rest of the session. If I was to wind in the first time I cast out on this session and they were all cruddy, I think, maybe I change over to a pop-up presentation or a choddy or something. I can adapt and change and see what works on each session. Got more time to make the changes and more time to see the results of making those changes. Again, it's all down to time. So this is when I'm going to go back to the big name anglers. So I know there's a lot of you probably saying, but you see these anglers go out and they'll do a day session and they'll catch loads of fish. Yes, of course, there's anomalies to this. You can go to runs, waters, catch loads of fish, or you can go to a rock solid place, first cast, and get a fish. I'm not saying that time is the only factor, but what you can't deny is that a lot of these big name anglers, and I wouldn't say I'm a big name angler, but I'm an angler in the industry, putting myself out there. I fish a lot more than a lot of you guys are able to fish at home. So if you see me catching more fish than other people, or you think, oh, he catches way more than me, I'm out on the bank a lot more than other people. The law of averages, everything's coming together is to boost my catch rates. It's time. So hopefully that's getting across to you. Now, I did also try and ask ChatGPT. As you've seen, I've used AI in my fishing before, and I just wanted to see what they came up with different points with improvements of having extra time. And one of them was watercraft. It did pick up on that, so increased watercraft, refined baiting strategy, longer sessions allow bait to work over time, pulling fish in and building confidence. And that could be applied to this one. I've been putting bait in over the last 24 hours. Some of that bait is hopefully starting to establish itself in this swim. Fish that maybe didn't notice here before might start to pick up a scent trail and come in. It's giving me more time for my tactics to work on this session. Improved swim choice. So this is more time means you can move swims or stay mobile, increasing chance of finding fish. So again, if you're short session, you've only got a few hours in one swim, you see fish elsewhere, but you haven't got time to move, it's pretty obvious. You're not going to catch them unless you had an extra day on your hands or something to go and move on to those fish. Adapt conditions. You can react to weather changes, pressure drops, or shifts in carp's activity. If you're pigeonholed into only being able to fish on a Saturday once a month, you have to just deal with whatever the weather's thrown your way and how busy the banks are. More time, you can be more choosy and more selective on what you do. Multiple methods tested. With time, you can trial different rigs, baits, presentations, find out what works. I think I pretty much covered that already. Fish recovery time. This one was a bit of an odd one. After catching, carp often return to baited areas. Staying longer gives more chance of multiple bites. I don't think that's really referring to the fish you've just caught. I think that means once the spot has been blown apart by a fish going off, you've got more time for the fish to return and get another bite. And less pressure. You're not so rushed. This is a really good one, actually. You're not so rushed. You make better, calmer decisions than lead to more fish on the bank. And I think that is a point I probably should have had further up in the list when talking about time being such a key element to your fishing, is because I get to go fishing most weeks. If I have a session where it just doesn't happen, I'm like, yeah, it sucks, but I might be out in a few more days. Whereas if you've only got one session and you really have to make it happen, make that session count, you may rush things, get things wrong, and then not fish to the best of your abilities. I think that's a really good point. Thank you, ChatGPT, for that one. That's really helpful. Checking the timestamp, I think I've been waffling for just over 10 minutes, but I know this is a very one-sided discussion because I'm talking to you through a camera and you're watching on your screen, but please do get involved in the comment section below. Whether you completely disagree with everything I've just said, or if you've got extra points to add to this, I'll probably turn the camera off and think, oh, I should have said that as well. But that is it in a nutshell. The biggest edge in carp fishing that cannot be disputed by anyone is time, and more of it. You just got to tell your respective other halves that that's the reason you're not catching, and say, let me stay a bit longer. And this point is going to be completely disproven if I go into the second night and go tomorrow still blanking. But the odds are still greater having 2 nights. I hope I prove myself right. One of the other benefits of spending much more time on the bank is that you get to enjoy beautiful mornings like we did this morning. The mist coming up off the lake, the sun rising, the bittern and the cuckoos in the background, absolutely stunning. So it was really nice to be up watching that. And the reason I was up that early is because The bite came and I lost the fish. One single beep on the rod that's going to the pads. That's how locked up I'm fishing, and that was still enough stretching the line and kiting left for it to get in the pads and do me. And by the time I was playing it, I was just solid on a lily pad. Held it there, eventually came free, and I got everything back, the whole rig and everything, but no fish on the end, unfortunately. So the bite came on the second night, which is kind of proving my point that there was more chance of a fish by being here for longer. It's just a shame I didn't have the fairy tale ending of showing you a fish in my hands. Time to start packing down. All of my power packs are dead. My laptop's dead. I need to be getting some work done. The laptop's just about to die, so unfortunately the rods need to come in. I've been here just shy of 48 hours and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time. I feel like I've learnt this swim quite a bit. They have behaved in the way I expected each day. The bite window this morning, what I expected, it just didn't happen. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. And again, as I've said before on these videos, let me know in the comment section below what you think on this topic, whether you agree with me or if you think I'm completely wrong, if there's other things you think are actually more important than time on the bank. So there we go. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, like the video if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.